Okay, well, good morning, Mayor and Council, and thank you for the opportunity to provide a transit system update this morning. As we look at this year, in a year where we did not necessarily implement a lot of additional enhancements to our bus system, we as staff continue to work diligently to accomplish some of the goals outlined in our strategic business plan and continue to concentrate on providing high levels of service based on the improvements that we have made. So with that, one of the things we're focusing on in particular, again related to our strategic business plan, is our issue around community relations. And the idea there is, you know, we see a continued emphasis from the community in terms of expectations for a modern and robust transit system. And so as a transit agency, we obviously want to promote and foster as good as community relations as we can, because we want to demonstrate the value to transit, not only as a preferred option for some that choose to use it, but also even if an individual in our community doesn't use transit, they recognize the value that it brings to the community. So with that, in thinking of fostering good community relations, we're really focusing on three areas: proactive engagement, responsible stewardship, and then continuing to deliver high levels of service. And so in the presentation this morning, what I would like to do is just share with you some of the things that we're doing in these areas and provide some examples of some different programs and projects that we currently have underway, again, in order to promote transit and demonstrate the value within our community. So first thing we'll take a look at is some of our engagement efforts. And really our engagement focuses on three areas. Obviously we want to be part of the community. We want to build engaging relationships with some of our community partners. Community partners range from businesses to nonprofits to even neighborhood associations. We certainly want to engage our partners in education, particularly public education. OCCC has always been a great partner of ours, strong supporter of transit, as well as some of the career techs within the community. We want to engage our community and show the health benefits that transit can provide, and I have some specific examples to show you in areas that we've been able to influence over the last year in terms of health. And then research and planning. We also continue engagement through research and planning efforts, whether it be customer surveys or niche type market research projects, even long and short-term planning, such as the Northwest Corridor Concept Plan, and even a fare study that we currently have underway that I'll talk about just briefly. So on the next slide here, these are some examples of some engagement efforts that we've undergone within the last year. In the top left of your slide, you can see an EMBARK bus there as we participated in the Martin Luther King Day Parade that occurred January 16th. Top right is an image of EMBARK participating in another community outreach event, Open Streets. We've actually participated in 3 of those over the last few years. The bottom left is an image of some volunteers from EMBARK participating in the mayor's litter blitz. I believe that was late last summer. And then bottom right, an image of one of our bus operators and a couple of employees from special services participating in a food drive for area-wide agent agencies. So again, I share these pictures with you just to give you an idea of some of the things we're doing on a regular basis above and beyond just providing basic transportation. Again, all about engaging our community, demonstrating the value, and trying to be a good partner. So looking at education, obviously another form of engagement with our community, and I thought it might be an opportune time to talk about the Hall Pass program. As you know, the Hall Pass program has actually been available since September of 2015 to all middle and high school students within the Oklahoma City Public School District. The program that was adopted back in 2015 allows those students to receive unlimited bus rides for $10 a month, anywhere, anytime EMBARK bus service is operational. In December, the COPPA Board of Trustees actually expanded that program, and the new program opens up actually free bus service to all juniors and seniors within the Oklahoma City School District. And so we've been busy at work arranging meetings with the principals of the high schools, arranging times to visit the schools and be able to provide a quick orientation and education session about transit, and of course sign up the juniors and seniors for participation in the program. So to date, we've met with about 9 different principals. We've actually had 3 separate meetings at the schools to sign students up. We've signed students up at Capitol Hill, Classen, SAS, and Star Spencer. And to date, we have about 231 students who have chose to sign up for the free hall pass program. And we expect that number to grow substantially as we work through meeting with the rest of the schools. And then as you can see there on the slide, this is actually an image from Capitol Hill. And then we had Representative Bennett there who put out some social media for us. So we're certainly appreciative of that. Looking at the next slide here, this is some of the engagement we've done in terms of health and wellness within our community. And I'm pleased to report that EMBARK is now a tobacco-free transit system. And following the city ordinance adopted back in December of 2015, we've transitioned all of our facilities. Of course, our vehicles have always been smoke-free, but all of our facilities, the entire transit system, is tobacco and vape-free. We join, obviously, other municipalities, but also other transit systems, specifically the Dallas Transit System to our south, Tulsa within our state, are also smoke-free. So we're glad to be joining that group. And we really believe that although this policy, could be inconvenient for some, it really does support our overall goals of improving air quality. It does help us to be able to maintain cleaner facilities, and we believe it will improve the overall experience for the customer. And so what you see on the slide there is actually a tobacco-free health fair that we held in July of this last year. And when we implemented this program, again, we put the notices out to our customer base that the tobacco-free policy was coming. We got the cooperation of TSET to come and actually set up the health fair and try to direct people towards smoking cessation programs and assistance if they needed it, and then ultimately implemented the policy in August. But again, with the idea of engaging our community, we didn't just put the rule in place, but we really wanted to provide tools and resources for people that wanted to choose to quit using tobacco. So in the areas of research, engaging our community through research, as you know, we do customer satisfaction surveys on an annual basis. We also do some market research, and I'll share with you some results from a niche survey that we did. And then again, we continue our planning efforts, particularly long-term and short-term planning. And we're going to look at one of our fair studies as part of an example of some of the planning that we've been doing. So in our customer survey, and I know that Chris Tatham with ETC was here and shared with you a lot of the results from that survey, but just as a recap and a reminder, our current rider profile, you can see that most of the customers of our system are transit dependent. Over half of the riders use our service to get to work. They are employed. And then just under half of the customers of the transit system make multiple transfers to get to their final destination. And so even, despite the fact that multiple transfers often have to occur, our satisfaction levels, we believe, are pretty good at about 69% of respondents rating the quality of EMBARK service overall as either good or excellent. And then here's an example of some of that niche survey work that we've done. This is a recent commuter survey we did for downtown commuters, and I'll share some of the results with you here. You can see that based on about 700 responses within the downtown commuter community, up to about 57% of the respondents indicated their commute was up to 45 minutes. 64% acknowledged that they made no stops to and from work. About 90% of the commuters traveled alone, and most, about 68%, arrived at work between 7 and 9 a.m. So why is this important? It's important as we begin developing our messaging and trying to promote transit to new users that one of the things we wanted to understand was what was the downtown commuter dynamic, because really downtown is probably the best served area in the city for transit when you think about all of the bus routes pulsing at the downtown transit center. So as we begin educating the community and we hear things that like, well, the bus takes me too long to get where I need to go, or takes me too long to get to work. We know some commuters now take up to 45 minutes, many in the 30-minute range. We often hear that, well, the bus doesn't give me the flexibility that I need because I'm making stops to and from work, I'm having to run errands, when in fact, most people, when they commute to downtown, you can see they'll just get in their car, drive to work, and go home. Traveling alone, 90% traveling alone, that's important to us because it continues to position transit as a value. In other words, individuals can generally save money by taking transit, commuting to work. And then again, often hearing, well, I don't know if the bus really runs at the times that I need it. With 68% of the respondents arriving between 7 and 9 a.m., that's one of our busiest times. That's our peak service area. So we certainly wouldn't have any issues providing service at those times. So we'll continue to take this information and work it into our communication plan moving forward. Next slide I have here shows engagement through planning, and this is a project I wanted to talk about just quickly, and this is a fare study that we just recently kicked off. In fact, in October of 2016, the COTPA Board of Trustees authorized negotiations and approved a contract with 49's Group to conduct a fare study for the EMBARK transit system. And you can see on the slide there the different pieces of the fare policy, but basically what this consultant is going to help us do is they're going to take a look at our current fare structure. They're going to look at that fare structure, also make some recommendations to us in terms of how we can integrate transit fares to be multimodal, and also is there a way to integrate transit fares and the parking system? In other words, particularly thinking of the downtown streetcar and the downtown Discovery, is there a way that a person could park, say, in a COTPA garage and at the same time pay a transit fare for circulation downtown? So we're looking at those options. So that's part of the fare structure. They'll look also at peer cities. They'll look at national averages. They'll look at some of our fare box recovery goals, and they'll help us with a fare structure. Then they're going to develop a schedule and a financial model for us. And what we find is a lot of the larger transit systems in particular will have a schedule where generally every 3 to 5 years they'll take a look at their fares, they'll compare it to the cost of providing the service and make any necessary adjustments. So we want to be able to also have a schedule like that in place and a model that we can use to update that when appropriate. The consultants are also going to help us with a Title VI equity analysis, and essentially that will be a public process where customers, residents, those interested in the transit system and the fares will have opportunities to comment. We'll also make sure that whatever the fare structure is and fare model shows that it is not any violation of any Title VI requirements, basically not putting an adverse impact on any type of minority or low-income group. And then from there, we'll look at fare collection alternatives. We know the technology is changing in fare collection. We've all seen the ability to pay transit fares on your mobile phone or maybe through a reloadable smart card. So the consultant will also make recommendations in that area. And all this is geared up really to improve the current fare structure of the bus system, but also trying to think ahead and how can we integrate additional modes, a bus and bike mode, a streetcar and bus mode, maybe a pass for all transit. So we're looking at that, and we'll be pleased to report back to council as we get further into that process. Okay, so taking the next category here of our efforts to build community relations is we also believe stewardship is one of those ways we can demonstrate our value to the community. Being good stewards in the areas of our resources and assets, being good stewards of the environment, and of course ensuring fiscal responsibility. And so I just want to touch on those items real quick and show you some examples of what we've been doing in those areas. So this next slide takes a look at some improvements we've made to transit stops. And the reason I wanted to highlight these this morning is these are all examples of projects where we've been able to partner with other organizations or other city departments to improve pedestrian connections, improve bus stops, but not necessarily all be on the resources of the transit agency. So I'll explain. In the top left, you'll see a new bus shelter at 10th and Western, and you'll notice the Classen 10-pin neighborhood logo on that bus shelter. Again, this was a joint project between the neighborhood and EMBARK, where the neighborhood actually approached us and said, hey, we'd like to have a bus shelter in our neighborhood, can you help? They coordinated with the planning department, who administer different neighborhood grant funds. So in essence, the neighborhood received a grant to buy the shelter. We as EMBARK, we constructed the shelter and did all the concrete work. So just an example of a partnership with a neighborhood. And we actually have two more of those partnerships, or I should say two more projects through that same type of partnership in the works, where we'll be putting in a shelter at 13th and Martin Luther King, and I believe 12th and Lottie, and both of those are at request of neighborhoods. So it's really encouraging to see neighborhoods embrace and be interested in improving transit in their area. In fact, we're speaking at a neighborhood homeowners association tonight about transit, EMBARK along with the city's PIM department. So we're looking forward to that. In the top right, you'll see a picture of a new shelter at 10th and Meridian, and this is a shelter that was constructed as part of a GEO bond street improvement project. So Public Works essentially did this work for us and put the shelter up as part of the bond project. Now, the advantage to us in the partnership, and what we appreciate, is Public Works basically, gave us a seat at the table so that as this project was being developed, we could make recommendations in terms of where bus stops needed to be improved. Excuse me. And then the pictures at the bottom of the slide here, this is an example of where EMBARK partnered with General Services. This is a location at Southwest 29th and May, and this location gets a lot of pedestrian activity. In fact, we have two bus routes that serve this intersection, Route 11. We have, on average in a month, about 700 boardings and alightings. So that's 700 people getting on the bus, 700 people getting off the bus. When you look at Route 12, the boardings and alightings range from 800 to 900 people per month. So there's a lot of activity generated just by the transit activity, not to mention other pedestrian activity that might occur. So we were able to partner with General Services, use some of our grant money, use some funding that General Services had for ADA improvements, and we're able to, as you can see there, put in some audible pedestrian signals, some curb cuts, and some sidewalks to connect to existing bus stops and provide pedestrian connections around that intersection. All right, another program that we've just recently been able to gain agreement on is working with the SHINE program to help us maintain the cleanliness of some of our bus stop locations. As a growing transit system with more and more riders, it becomes more and more of a challenge sometimes to keep up with maintaining and keeping those bus stops clean. And so although our vendor for advertising does a lot of the cleaning and maintaining of the shelters, it is a lot to keep up with, and we want to continue to look for ways to be good neighbors, good community partners, and keep our bus stops as clean as we possibly can. So the agreement we have with SHINE, and the program hasn't started, we expect it to start within the next hopefully 30 to 60 days, but the agreement is we've identified two corridors as kind of a pilot program. You can see the one corridor is basically north, or I should say 23rd Street from Portland to Northeast Laird. The corridor over on the far right is Martin Luther King from about 4th all the way up to Remington Park. And so what the SHINE program will do is on a regular basis, they will patrol these corridors and help us pick up any debris or refuse at the bus benches. So we're looking forward to that. For us, we basically provide the trash bags, the gloves, other supplies, and then the SHINE program provides the personnel. All right, next slide here. Just some improvements that we're going to be doing at the Transit Center. On the left, you can see some areas that we're going to improve, some landscaping. The image on the right is actually an image showing the roof line of all the canopies and the facilities. And we're going to be making some repairs to the roof, installing some ice dams and that kind of thing. So the idea, again, with being good stewards of resources, the Transit Center is almost 13 years old. It's held up remarkably well, but it's certainly time to give it a facelift. So we'll be looking into that in the spring and the summer. The next slide is a image of a CNG fueling center. And again, in the interest of being good stewards of our environment, we're joining many other transit agencies across the country, large transit agencies in the Northeast and on the West Coast, but also transit agencies here in our state of Oklahoma, whether it be Tulsa Transit or the Norman Transit System, CART. We are converting our bus fleet to CNG. We actually have one of our CNG buses staged out here in front of City Hall if you'd like to take a look at that when the council meeting is over. But we are very encouraged and excited to be able to have our own CNG fueling facility on site. That project is currently in about 30% design, and we hope to have it completed in 2018. Then in terms of bus replacement, I mentioned the new CNG buses. We've actually received 6 new CNG buses that we've added to our fleet. You can see a couple of images here on the slide of those buses in production. And I'm pleased to report that, as you'll recall, since about 2013, we were talking and informing council about the need to replace buses and how some of the new federal legislation really hampered our ability to be able to replace those buses in terms of funding availability. But I am pleased to report that with some of the grant money that we've received over the last few years, in addition to being awarded a $1.9 million competitive grant from the FTA, we now have enough funding in place to replace all of our existing buses that are past their useful life. And so that's about 30% of our fleet, 18 buses. We now have a complete funding plan in place for that, and we expect to order 11 buses within the next month for delivery about 12 to 18 months after that. And so we're really pleased with the performance of the New Flyer buses that we've added to the fleet, and we'll be ordering the same model moving forward. And then just quickly, I'll wrap up on services. I just wanted to give you a quick idea of some ridership trends. In FY17, we have seen a little bit of a decline in our ridership. You'll notice that FY16, we averaged about 11,400 trips per day on our weekday service. FY17, we're at about 11,300, so just a little over a 1% decline. But what's interesting is when you compare these results to what's occurring nationally, we're actually doing much better in terms of maintaining our ridership. Nationally, transit systems in populations between 500,000 to 2 million, with through the second quarter of the 2016 calendar year, they were down about 5.1%. When we look at some of our peer cities that we were compared to in our transit system analysis, we can look at some ridership declines ranging anywhere from 2 upwards of 6%. So we are seeing nationally some declines in ridership. The industry believes a lot of that is driven by the price of gas. We've had lower fuel prices now for several years. People have adjusted accordingly. But in terms of holding our own, I think we're doing a pretty good job so far when we look at comparisons to other cities. And then just quickly, I think I have a couple of more slides. I wanted to also share with you a new mode of transit that we have introduced to the Oklahoma City community, and that is rideshare. If you're not familiar with rideshare, basically it's a carpool program. With the exception is that the transit agency, EMBARK in this case, we will market it to large employers. The transit agency will gather information from those that are interested in participating, will help the employer or the participants kind of group up the different pools based on where they live and the fact that they're all probably commuting to the same location, their employer. We, through a contract with a vendor, will provide a vehicle, the fuel, and the maintenance. The participants pay a fee to participate in that pool, and one of the participants volunteers to be the designated driver for that program. And so this is a service that we've just launched. It's brand new to Oklahoma City. You'll find it in other major metropolitan areas, Houston, Dallas, Austin. They all have very large van pool programs. The idea is it is a form of public transportation that we can use for areas where there may not be the density or we may not be able to serve with bus service. It's also public transportation that maybe someone that doesn't use the bus, they choose to use the van pool program. And the benefit to the transit agency is that it's all counted as revenue miles. So that impacts our formula funding, which then means we will eventually have more funding to support bus service and other services that we provide. So right now we have one pool in progress. We're working with the Boeing company on that. And we've also had some discussions with Tinker Air Force Base and the FAA. So we're looking at broadening and expanding that program as we move forward. And then finishing up, just looking at a timeline for the Oklahoma City streetcar, and I know you're pretty familiar with this, but just as a recap, we know we have the groundbreaking for the main line next week. We're expecting the first streetcar to be delivered in June. Maintenance facility completed in October. We'll be actually doing some testing, some initial testing of the vehicles later this calendar year, amazingly enough, and then service launched at the end of 2018. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
You talked about some additional funding that you received through grants to help us grow the fleet. What was the dollar figure on that? I didn't hear you.
Yeah, it was a $1.9 million, which with the local match will help us purchase 6 buses.
Is that something we can count on annually?
No, actually, we probably can't. It was a very competitive FTA grant program. In fact, they had in the neighborhoods of about $213 million to award. They received over 284 applications for about $1.6 billion. So that really gives you an idea of the state of good repair all over the country. And we're not alone in struggling to replace buses. So we're very fortunate to receive that.
Thank you.
Incredibly, Jason, it was so impressive to hear the amount of initiatives that are going on, even in a climate where we weren't able to do something as dramatic as increasing additional bus service or whatever. I just am always delighted to hear how innovative and forward-thinking, and you guys are. I know there's some fear about how we fund the streetcar, and I'm left with a lot of confidence that we're thinking and planning in advance. I'm very appreciative. The bike program, just a quick question. We did upgrade the Spokies bikes, and is that, are we seeing increased ridership? Is it sort of maintaining itself?
Yeah, so with the new bike share, we are seeing ridership hold its own and actually increase a little bit. The thing is we implemented that in August. And then we've kind of had the cooler weather since then. So the real test will be to compare our numbers in spring and summer. But no, we've received really good reviews, positive feedback, and even in implementing a new system, ridership has increased, or I should say trips taken has increased.
How many of the 11 are electric, if any, electric hybrids?
Oh, we have 2 electric hybrid buses in our fleet of 59 fixed route vehicles.
Does that help you with any grants if you use electric hybrids?
Yeah, so as part of the FTA's competitive grant program, they do take down about $55 million for what they consider to be low or no emission vehicles. And so for that particular grant program, yes, if we were to request funding for electric vehicles in particular, we would like to think that would make us more competitive. And in fact, we did actually apply for the 5339C federal program for no emission vehicles with the hopes of maybe adding a couple of electrics to our fleet. We were not successful on that grant application, but we will apply again.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Pete?
I want to start out by telling you how pleased I am with the progress we've made in the public transportation area. You've done a great job. When Rick left, I held my breath for 6 months, but you've done a really good job, and I appreciate it. When the hall pass thing is completely launched, has any thought been given to including the other public schools in Oklahoma City? That's Crooked Oak, Western Heights, Putnam City's probably would be the next from a population. Although both Western Heights and Crooked Oak are single high schools, so that it'd be easier to implement it there. Has any thought been given to expanding it beyond where it is now?
Yeah, staff has had some discussions on that very topic, and again, kind of seeing how this pilot program is going to go, we'll be able to brief the cockpit trustees with the thought of if it's successful, then we would open up the discussion of, okay, well, does it make sense to just have the program in place for the entire service area? Because there will be a few more schools that we could roll into it.
Well, all three of those are very much in our service area. So I'll put that bug in your ear so it'll be there a year from now when I'm not here to say it.
Okay.
All right. Jason, thank you.
Thank you.